everyone, and welcome to another episode of Confessions of an Autism Mom. So, this episode is a tad bit different because I don't have an autism mom. I actually have an OT, which is an occupational therapist that's on today. Her name is Melissa, and basically, Melissa is going to talk about how she contributes to the autism community. She is a past RBT, and we're going to touch on some of the things that she does now. Just a brief background. I met Melissa on TikTok. She has a page where she talks about the traditions of ABA therapy and how she does it differently and how she works hands on with moms and families. So we're going to hop right on in with that. How are you today, Melissa?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me today.
Oh, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. So let's go ahead and hop right on into the episode today. Can you start off by introducing yourself and just how you got introduced into the autism world and becoming an OT?
Yeah, so my name is Melissa McDonough. I am an occupational therapist and I am also an autism parent coach. And I started working with the autism community almost 10 years ago when I started working as an RBT. And I worked in schools and homes and in the community for a couple of years while I worked to get into OT school. And then following occupational therapy school, I continued working with the pediatric population. I worked in clinics, I worked in schools, and now I work from home coaching parents.
Perfect. And so, what made you want to take that route into coaching parents?
Yeah, so when I worked in the school setting, I was able to collaborate with parents a lot for IEP meetings, and I really enjoyed having that collaboration. And I feel like parents do need a lot of support, especially in the program I'm working in. It's for parents who have children that are newly diagnosed. So they're still learning about autism and how it affects their child and how to parent their child. So I think this is really needed, and I see so much progress with the families that I work with. So I've been really enjoying it.
So, as an RBT, of course, did you work at a ABA center or you did?
Yeah. So I worked for two different companies. Actually, the first one was mostly in-home therapy. And then I went to a different company where it was just in the school system. And so I was with one child in his classroom all day, supporting him. So I didn't do too much work at the clinic. We did have some groups that we would run in the clinic, but I was mostly in homes and in the school.
Okay. And as far as ABA, because I know you and I, we briefly talked about some of the response because one thing that you and I both agreed on, I don't like the method of you do this and then you can have this. What made you not like that process when it came to ABA therapy? And how
Yeah,
does it affect the child?
Yeah, it felt like the child was only doing what we were asking to earn that external reward. So, upon becoming an OT, I've learned that there are other ways that we can work with children, especially using their strengths as a motivator and really getting them to learn that intrinsic motivation rather than working for something specific. And I think it affects them because really, if you're using an external reward for a child who most kids with autism, they rely on routines, then they become used to that routine of, oh, if I do this, then I get this external reward. So then if you don't have the reward, they're not going to want to do what you're asking them to do because they're expecting that specific reward. So I think it's better to use their strengths, use their interest to work with them and have them learn the skills that we're trying to teach them rather than having them earn some sort of reward or sticker chart.
Okay. And this is what is known as the withholding in the compliance base. Is that method? Okay, perfect.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I want to make sure everybody understood what we were talking about. So let's talk about the handover assistance. Can you explain that?
Yeah. So a lot of times when teaching a new skill, let's, for example, say that your child is 2 years old and they're not pointing yet. And a therapist is telling you to teach them how to point, you need to grab their hand and kind of have them do that point with your hand. then not only is the child learning to rely on that physical prompt from the parent to learn how to point, we're also not giving them the bodily autonomy. What if they want to communicate in a different way and they don't want to point, but we're forcing them to do that? So I prefer not to do hand over hand and instead do modeling. So for the pointing, then we would have the parent model pointing to different things, and doing that and exposing that to them over and over rather than taking their body and forcing them to do their finger in a point.
Okay, because I know that's one method we use a lot, which because I feel like that is how he communicates without getting frustrated. But as you say, because they may not have an object or a person to use, to point. So that is completely understanding. So now that you are working directly with parents, what made you want to work with us, like just hands on?
Yeah. So as I mentioned before, I got to talk with parents a lot in the school setting because we did collaborate for each IEP meeting. And at my last job, I was the only OT, so I had the whole school. So I was collaborating with about 45 families for each IEP throughout the school year. So I got really comfortable and built really strong connections and relationships with the families. And I had a friend who was working from home doing this job, coaching families, and kind of communicated to me about how it was going and how the program was. And it just felt like a really good shift for me to make just because I had already had that experience working with so many families. And I was really excited to be able to support families because I feel like when families get these autism diagnoses, they don't have a ton of support and they probably feel really lost and like they need someone to help guide them. So it's been really great being that person to be able to support these families during this time.
Okay. And just doing a quick comparison, I know like at ABA, we do parent training like once a week. How does your hands-on program? Are you once a week? Are you like every day? Can you do a comparison just briefly for us?
Yeah, so typically in the program that I'm working in, families will have 2 appointments per week. One
Okay.
is parent only, where we do a lot of parent education. We go through different modules to teach different things, like proactive strategies, reactive strategies, potty training. There's a whole list of things that we go through. And then the other session is parent child, where the parent will set up the camera and be playing with the child. And then we're kind of directing them how to set up play or how to word things, how to do things to get them to meet their developmental milestones. And so each session is typically 1 hour. So they're doing about 2 hours per week.
Okay, that's a really great amount. I like that. So let's go ahead. You talked to me about natural-based strategies. So sorry, and I have also seen them on your TikTok video as well. How do you use that to focus on the coaching with the parents?
Yeah. So again, how we had mentioned, I try to stay away from the compliance-based strategies with the external reinforcers. I try to teach parents to really see what it is that their child navigates towards, what kind of toys they like, if they like music or songs, and use that to teach these skills. So let's say a child really enjoys music, then we might use that a lot in the sessions to teach whatever skills we're trying to teach. Or if they love snack time, then we might use that to offer choices to work on that pointing skill. Just using things that they really enjoy to teach the skills, but not withholding those things at the same time.
Perfect. That's understandable because that makes perfectly good sense because I'm learning as we go as well. So my question to you, you worked in the ABA setting and now you're an OT, well, you are an OT and now you're hands-on with parents as well.
Yes.
A lot of talk on the internet, well, on social media, is that kids do not need ABA therapy. Like they can be okay with OT, speech, physical therapy, feeding. How do you feel about that?
Well, the company that I work for, the family either has a choice to do ABA therapy or do the program that I work in.
Okay.
And so I think it really depends on the family and the child's needs. So we typically have kids that have less behavioral needs.
Okay.
So I think if they have a lot of behaviors, then ABA is beneficial. And I think it depends on the place because some places are still using compliance-based strategies and outdated strategies. I'm hearing a lot from people on TikTok that a lot of ABA companies have moved on from that. So I'm not sure because I haven't worked in the field for almost 10 years. That was
Okay.
just my experience. So I'm not quite sure how it is today. So I think it really just depends on the family and the company.
Yeah. Because where we go is more play based, which is why I like it. But I also know that my son, he has a lot of behaviors that would not allow us to be at home with the camera. Like I would love that, but I just like he's very impulsive. He still head bangs a little bit, but he's coming out of those behaviors. So once we get there, I can see me doing like the hands-on coaching, assistant.
Yeah.
In an OT and working hands-on with family, how has your views and how do you see and support autistic kids differently?
Yeah, I feel like when I first started working as an RBT, I didn't know much about autism. I didn't really know how to support families. So I think now that I've been working with this population for such a long time and I have so much experience that I am better able to support families than I was before. And just teaching them different strategies and different skills that will really help make things easier for everybody, for their child and for their family. And we do that with, teaching the importance of routines, using visual schedules, really finding your child's interest in using that to build and teach skills, different things like that. Really just supporting parents because there's a lot of times that I'll mention something and they'll be like, wow, I never thought to do that, or I would never thought of something in that way. So it's really nice to be able to support them and just teach them new things.
That's something most parents don't know about how OT works in a school setting that is beneficial to their child.
Yeah, so I would say the big difference between having OT in a clinic versus OT in the school is in the school setting, what we work on really has to directly affect the child's school day. So if it's something that wouldn't affect their school day, maybe like brushing teeth, then we probably wouldn't target that. But there's so many different things that we can work on in the school setting, like handwriting, if they have difficulty opening their snack packages at lunch, that's affecting their school day. So we would work on them being able to be more independent, opening their snacks. We can do dressing because at school they have to take their jacket off, they have to put it on, they have to be able to zip it up. So anything that's really affecting their school day is something that OT could really help with.
How do you support basically regulation and communication without, the compliance, give me and you can have this or do this and I'll give you this? How do you support that?
Yeah, so I think the main thing with regulation, I like to use this phrase. It's called regulation before expectation. So the first thing that you have to make sure is that the child is regulated before you have any expectation or demand placed on them. So really finding whatever works for that child to help regulate. It's so different for everybody. Some kids really respond well to counting to 10. Some kids like squeezes. Some kids like weighted blankets. It just depends on what their sensory needs are. So, really learning your child's cues, what kind of sensory they seek, is the big part of that regulation piece. And
Gotcha.
then that's really important to be able to teach skills because, like I said, if they're dysregulated, their brain can't access the area that they need to use to be able to take in new information. So we can't teach them anything if they're dysregulated. And then, as far as the compliance, like staying away from that, again, I try to find the child's interest to be able to teach skills rather than, having them work for food or work for some sort of reward. Just finding whatever their interest is to have them do whatever the goal is. It's so like, for example, I had a student at my last job who loved Barbies, and the only thing she would do in the OT room was play with Barbies. And she was a new student at our school, so I was still learning her. And she had a handwriting goal, and I'm like, okay, how am I going to work on handwriting if the only thing she'll do in the OT room is play with Barbies? So instead of telling her, first you have to sit down and do this writing assignment and then you can play with Barbies, I came up with the idea, okay, I'm going to print out these fake hello, my name is stickers and then have us write names and put them on the Barbies so that we can work on that handwriting goal, but also incorporate something that she really likes to do in OT. And that way I don't have to tell her like, oh, first you have to do this and then you can get this thing that you really like. Instead, I incorporated the two together. And she sat down and wrote the names with me and put them on the Barbies and had a really great time.
That's amazing, because I would have never thought of anything like that. And that's why we have you all, because I think about that with my son. Like now I try to interact with him and it's so hard because I'm like, how do I get him to want to do this activity without taking away his favorite thing? And it's like really hard, but I'm slowly learning how to incorporate different things in the things that he loves. Because like I said, I don't like that, oh, give me this, I'll give you that, or I really don't. And I've always said that from the start. I don't like the rewards. They call it the
Yeah.
reward system.
Yeah.
And I just don't like that for some reason. And just to piggyback, I know for me, I am ready for my son to start school. He's just 4, and we have special needs pre-K here in Georgia. But I had to really come to terms that we're still learning how to regulate him because he's never regulated. And his BCBA say that is the only issue holding him back, because if he's not regulated, he's not going to be able to learn or do anything in the
Right.
school setting. Um, so I have learned like to step back, because I'm like, I'm ready for him to go to school and at least try. But then I had to come to terms with that. So thank you for bringing that point up.
Of course.
With that, what would you say to parents that are unsure about their kids' process?
What do you mean their kids' process?
So for me, like in OT, I know he's progressing, but then it's kind of like, is he really? Because it's still hard for him to do certain things like open the door or flush the toilet, things like that.
Okay, so their progress, like in therapy.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes progress can take a long time. It just really depends on the child, and that's why it's so important to celebrate those really small steps and progress that they have made, those small wins. They're actually huge. And yeah, we just have to be patient. Sometimes it just does take a while to start seeing progress. Um, I would definitely collaborate with the therapist to see, where they were at the assessment and where they are now, because maybe we're not remembering where they started and they are actually making progress, but we just kind of forget where they were when they started therapy. That's a nice thing in our program. We do something called a developmental milestone tracker. So at assessment, we ask the parents if the child is always, sometimes, or never doing the milestones, and we have a whole tracker. And then in 6 months, we go through it again, and it's different colors from the first assessment versus the second. And we start filling in all of these boxes, and it really shows the progress in the last 6 months. So that's something that I really like in our program. But yeah, definitely collaborating with the therapist, letting them know maybe you feel like they're not making that much progress, and see if they can go over things with you or with the parent, as far as where the child was when they started at assessment and where they are now.
And also, Melissa, in the beginning, I did not ask you, but I was a little curious. How did you get into becoming an RBT? Like, have you always been interested in the field, or how did you get there?
Yeah, so I went to San Francisco State University and I studied psychology there. And then at the time, I was working a desk job and I got my degree, and I was like, I really want to use my psychology degree, but I'm not sure how. So I started looking up jobs on Indeed, and then I started seeing a lot of jobs for RBT and ABA. And I didn't know anything about ABA. I didn't know anything about autism. I had barely any experience with children, but I was kept reading the description of what the job entailed. And I was like, wow, this sounds really great. And like, I would love to try this out and see if it's something that I like. And that's kind of how I got into it.
Okay, good. And I love that because sometimes I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, it's something to do, but you're very passionate about it and it really, really shows. And I love that you have taken, I'll be honest, until I came across your page, I didn't even know of such a thing as like a coach for autism parents. Like I had no idea that it existed.
Yeah, I
So
didn't know about it either until my friend told me. And I was like, wow, that's such a great idea because parents really need this support.
yeah, because I can say as a parent, even though I'm going to like parent training, a lot of times I do feel lost. And I'm like, oh my God, this isn't my field. I don't know. I don't understand. Because each day I feel like I'm learning and understanding my son more and more. But to have an actual coach that is hands on directly with us, that is amazing. And I love that you stepped into that field. So, if you can give just one piece of advice to a parent from your point of view and your field, what advice would you give us?
I would say the most important thing would be making sure that you are regulated because you can't help your child if you're dysregulated. So it's such an important part is if your child is going through a tantrum or a meltdown and it's starting to dysregulate yourself, then just taking a minute to step away and, take some deep breaths or whatever it is that regulates you before trying to help your child. I think that's really huge, and parents kind of forget how important it is for their own regulation.
True. And that is very important. And you just mentioned tantrums and meltdowns. Do you think it's a difference? Because I feel like it's a difference. And when I said that, my God, I got chewed out on TikTok to the point that I removed the post because I really didn't mean any harm by it. But I know when my son is like having a meltdown, like I see it. But when he has those tantrums, I'm like, yeah, it's that. Do you think that it's a difference, or what are your thoughts on it?
Yes, there is a difference. I'm sorry that people came for you on that post because there definitely is a difference. So meltdown would be more sensory based if they are overstimulated and it turns into a meltdown versus a tantrum would be, let's say they want access to something. Let's say the child wants cookies and you're telling them no, then that might lead to a tantrum because they're not getting access to that cookie. But with a meltdown, it's not something they can control. It's all sensory based. It's being overstimulated and dysregulated, and that's what's causing the meltdown. It's not that there's something specific that they're wanting that you're not allowing them to have.
Gotcha. And that's all I said. I said that's all I said. And I was literally in the comments like, I know it's a difference because I told him no and he got upset. Like
Yes.
I And that's what I tell him. Like, I know when he has a meltdown because he's completely overstimulated. And I'm like, y'all, I'm not
Yes.
saying that his meltdowns are tantrums. I'm simply saying that when I tell him no, he's having a tantrum. And I know that and understand the difference as a parent. Um, what do you wish more professionals understood about parenting when it comes to parents?
I think the most important thing is that parents know their child better than anybody else. So if they're bringing a concern to you, then you should really listen to them and be open to collaborating with them about whatever that is because they are the expert on their child.
Perfect. Thank you. And I know that you are not a mom, and it is Confessions of an Autism Mom. But what is your confession as a professional working in the autism community?
I would say my confession is just that it's such a beautiful community to work with. It's so much fun getting to know so many different kids because every kid is so different. And being able to work with kids from, ages 1.5, I've worked up to, I think, in their 20s. So I just get to work with such a wide range of people, and I just absolutely love it.
Perfect. Thank you for that. And thank you so much for coming on and speaking about what you do in coaching parents. You all have to follow her on TikTok. Her content is amazing. I really love it. When I saw it, I reposted and followed her immediately. But her content is wonderful. Melissa, would you like to tell everyone where they can find you on each platform, your website, all of that?
Yes. So on TikTok and Instagram, it is at a regulated life. And then my website is aregulatedlife.com.
Perfect. And you all, I'll put it in the description box, whether you're watching it on YouTube or listening on Spotify. I will have that up so you all can click on it and follow her and even try out her program that she has online. And y'all, that is the end of our episode today. Thank you so much, Melissa, again for coming on. I've really enjoyed you, and I even learned a few things. And I completely support what you do and what you believe in and how you help and coach the parents. So, like I say, everyone, make sure you all follow her, and we will see you all next week on another episode of Confessions of an Autism Mom. Bye, y'all.
Bye.